Luca Terzani and Marco Terone present the Pecoranera. What others don't say. Friends friendly and welcome to this new episode of the Pecoranera. Today we have an impedance to host a wanted and known for his studies. Innovative on the mixture and ancient is a Gitto but not only. But as always, the scioloccio of 1C to Marco's presentation. Hi Marco, welcome back. Thanks Luca, good evening you good evening and our friends of the channel. Yes, I leave myself and burden, but also a pleasure because the professor came tonight. Corrado Malanga. Good evening Professor. Good evening you and thanks for yours. Spitality. Professory, a real would like to with us in tonight since also many of our listeners have asked. We wanted to deal with some themes that are a lot of leather into them also for God's previous videos that we have already made. So, I would like to start, in time, too from which few who still did not know it. Or I think they are few and you start that inside in and unless everything, where you are born from. On the interest is more Hades and what he had led to want not to deal with, let's say. Even with a research, he ruled you scientific that there is no little, it is so much to use. Technologies, we say innovative and how the synthetic intake was crossed, enthusiastically in the topic, it should be contained a second from how our passion for Adexis is born. So, in reality I seem incredible what he pulled you, not no passion for. Legito, the problem that no passion at all, only that it is like this would be. He wants, more because I am passionate about everything I see. At the moment when one day, a gentleman tells me, a conference should be made on the ancient things that the ancients on this. Chiarita had these technologists and knew, which we don't even know what they are, however. They are old technologists, we need to make a conference do it in Milan of how good. I will speak, I like my talk of the pyrames of Chinese, because what a lot. Interesting that the agent does not know our pyramids that are even larger than the Xeon's figures friends. The sumo was where they come, whoever built nothing. So, this conference is not done because he knows Malano all then there will be COVID. Everything that was obese. The Relunico who obviously is not a sense of vacation, not me. I am sick. And in his time continued to look and study it is a pebble. An image on the internet of the King's Frauen room, of the Piamia of which I operate, and I do one. Observation that evidently is a real one never done, as never there are two skias. And two bucci in the northern parette and in the southern parette, of this room, which connect. The room with the outside through canals, and these two bucks have the same height. In the wall of the granite tank that is in the center of the room, and that claretly should have been welcomed, let's say the body of the favone that. Moreover, it was never found, but it was found with its favone in a pyramile, but we are driven that the pyramiles even once do not. But you have to do it strongly pretend because if you don't have to think that things had given themselves differently and not absolutely, but look at what strange if the water entering one of these holes would reach the height of the sarcophago, but it would not fill it. Because it would come out of capillarity on the other side. And then I started looking for traces of water corrosion water in the pyramias of Lungafo. With Lungafo it means the protector of CNUM. Sorry, this point I found these traces of corrosion. And then I started taking a look to see if by chance the pyramid was a car. That works Asia of water and the reality was that is, the first results are from Notarini. At that point he has a first book, in which I show how the pyramid. In my opinion it worked. The pyramid is a kind of square rowing bell, the bell. Square has a feature that when he is shaken and in this case it came last. Valvento vibrates, but the livery are orthogonal to Diast, the wraporamic faces, it is not. like a normal bell that all vibrations go in all directions. So this technical aspect failed me to understand that the pyramid plague that moved in some way. With the wind, a frequency of Bretoria was pronounced that crossing a series of pawnshops that are called Z, and that I am only for the Pharaoni room, these frequencies C purified, entered our Pharaoh's room and did something. The species of tub in which it would be had to enter the Pharaoh, and in reality it was a tub that was built with Mizzi's crisis, Pacrico, or section 4.32, in numbers that are the numbers of the universe. The water would have served simply as we think of an electrical wire. Water. He would bring 1,400 meters a second, the vibration on the floor below, where there was the Queen's room, and they're called the Queen's room, but it is still nothing there. This vibration would have come out of the water, it would be somehow purified. I don't know if most people know it, but many don't, that in the room of the Queen, which standi have risotto with the epiramide of with a confu, there is a kind of nicchia in the wall that looks like a raisin of an harp, and through the measures of this resonance house, this frequency, brought the water, came out, and probably produced a strong vibration of the air, which it was that he would make a rod vibrate. A large organ rod found was located on the side of this room, of which there are traces on the partition of the room. In this large organ rod he was inside. Second, I don't have the Pharaoh 1. Pharaoh 1 listened to this frequency that served as vibration of healing, to heal, to prolongate one's life, to do something religious, of what it seems, but in the end, the pyramid was a car that threw laria, water and granite. Granite is 4 millimea per second is the vibration that I am now the granite, and it would have worked above all to substantially to save life of Pharaoni, to heal him, to prolong his life, existence. Then this point I write a book in the terrace, my friend Filippo Biondi, in which is a rad-date expert for Sintel tour, he tells me, but I read your book, you couldn't do the I pay and doc with Rada to see if your calculations are righteous, and so it is. Everything started. We began to develop a new software that substantially modified the Rada signals that are photonic signals, that is Rada and our photons that bang on the solid and in the crano and solid, because you know that mobile phones also work at home, so the radar that you transmit the information enters solid things and then moves the information outside. And well, we used the same system, only that by changing the software we have transformed visual landscapes photons into hairdryer, that is, in vibration. You know that we can see that an object inside a pyramid moves some milestone with this system, and we do it from 680 kilometers in height, that is the beautiful high, and sees you very well the things inside, that the pyramid, partly made of granite, is impeccable. Look, that the granite air is more impeccable. Because in the air it is the speed of the sun VA at 432 I/2 second. In granite it goes to 4000 I/2 second, so the granite is more transparent than the air. With this trick we managed to look inside, and it was the end, because then hunger reassembled. And then looking inside the pyramid of Kemp, we saw that inside there was all a series of condominiums, who had not denounced the favone, probably not to pay the inin. We looked under the pyramid and we broke out that they welcome paths that they go down 100 meters under the ground of the pyramid, which certainly had a meaning. Particular, that is, they served something, someone had customs for something and not substantially. Of the diapason of piedra that served from our point of view, to block all those. These are the frequencies, they are ours of the ancient nearby city of Cairo, of the noise of the river that moves from the neighbor, to make sure that everything that, as a liberation, are now, entered. In Capu's Pyramias, it was a pure but what strange vibration, hunger is eating there. And so, we moved the interruption to the Kefren Pyramias, and we discovered an incredible thing, that is, the Plata of Sefren. If you look at it, go to see on YouTube. On the internet, on where it seems, discover that it is a mountain of piedra with inside, of body. There is no room, there is no corridor, there is nothing, but you seem to be wasting if they could waste many strong to build the stone mountain that was useless. Here, the radar, looking inside, explores a whole series of affected things. That is, there is a real condominium in there. Nissi are at least 5 structures that as of the Z, that are Z, what is a Z is? One's end, it is that same structure that we found in Cheops Pyramias, whose nature was known for other and which is very good. That basically a passbase filter, that is, it is an object that purifies all the frequencies that the pyramid SCOSA from slow produces and only passes those on the 30 Hz. Who serve to obtain a certain result, and well in Kefren's Pyramias there were 5, trail oral places like the number 5 and the Dato de Pete only 4. The sides of the ADO and 1 in the middle. And these objects, if they were substantially, to make sure that the part underlying the pyramid, vibrating at a precise frequency. In the part below there would have been that kind of vascons that should have contained the body of the pharaoh, but I put 6,000 question marks because none. I could never try this, and this big Vasconi surrounded by granite that it became the frequency that the part above, the pyramid, the base bell and 4 downstairs and well this frequency would have obtained results, that is, who was inside that tank and was subject to this radiation and hairdryer that he could have truding variations, in the RPM, def rao. And already there we had practically and facts are bingo because we see uncovered, a series of structures that nobody had ever discovered. The problem is that looking at the pyramid a little more Darantano. We rushed that under the pyramid of Kafir. And there was of the stuff. Of the stuff that we alignly led absolutely what it was. He was their tubes. In the case of the pyramid of Kafir there are 8 tubes. Take an account of the size of about 20 meters in diameter and go down to 1,800 meters of depth. And these pipes are substantially placed on 2 lines that second the north line on Della Pirambi, Prato in the center of the Piramb and Scandolo took us. And these pipes are characterized by the fact that there is a kind of scolaccio in every one of these tubes that it descends for about 12 levels that we love the icosi. This is then seen in alethymography. That we have exposed the Sensi march to who is the wind to see our conference. More than 900 people, like a scale Kayasala? And we asked ourselves, to these tubes. Scandolo at the first level is 600, if I remember correctly, 648 meters deep, to these 600 with 48 meters deep we find ourselves with 2 cubic boxes of about 80 meters on the side, under Hrani, which, and make these 19th century organs entreat that. Amio so, here inside. After that you go down for another 7 centimeters below. And we so I rim that we had to distance the serving, make a series of tomographs of. Dika's plan. And the exato we discovered that there is a Maria of things, there is a city. A city, yes, a bilagging, a series of structures, a labyrinth, I don't know what in the anti-architects. All this is identified as the room of Amsenti, a minute all with 2. Final that means in ancient Egyptian or the place where you go beyond and beyond means life. The place where the sun also dies is that barrier that divides the world of Viri from the world of. What will be there below? Goes, the only possibility is going on foot, basically. That is, having the Tenansai permits will never find out what's up there, but even if there is no. For Messi to find out what's under there, we still, as a radar, sooner or later, we see it. Well, what's underneath, and I want to emphasize the fact that the synthetic opening radar. In reality this is a double synthetic opening, but I don't want to enter mnemotechnic. Then you will see it when we expose things. The problem is now we can ask ourselves. After the spell conference. There we don't have to technically have to be this question. But now we can do it. And the question is, look at the questions, in. The questions, but all Starabakila built, comma, when built it, comma, because. Built it? To these questions, history, legitology, science, and religion. With the Masonic part of religion, they have no possibility of responding. We do not know who this stuff built it, but we are sure, that is, certain, of one thing. Not the year built anti-T Gizzy, therefore of the transmission. From here, onwards, or I didn't think what he wants. Propitian, however, from the Asuperol, I get a question, because it seems to me that she has. Hinting to the fact that you have found references in ancient Egyptian texts. So, however, these buildings that you could see from so far have. In short, a horny track and deca, yes, of course, in reality you have to go up. To the ancients, priests of size, this important ancient city, which he had not. I remember the vague of something like that. That is, under the plain of Giza, there was a city. There was a labyrinth, there was an agent that there had been the ancient krona that are then lost in the folds of the ancient Greek history where these testimonies then came to from. Of Astrabone onwards and people have always thought that they were kinds now we find. Within these ancient legends, it is a bit the story was following, the fairy tale. And this, where you smoke us, is always a little bit of rost, and we have put our hand at the rost, and what to say, we can no longer consider the only stories at this point, the Testimonies of G, he said that under the plan of G, if it was a kind of great labyrinth, full of state and full of rooms, full of columns, full of everything, because now that high school stuff and we see it then some jets when we have us in. These research, substantially said but and rad dara from all synthetic. They are only spots to us who care. Here, I always said looked at you. I never want to talk about adjutologists, but adjutologists are graduated in letters. There is. 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 Of the Jergalifying, and I took realized that a shade, despite having done an excellent job, in an attempt to interpret Rosetta's stars and transform the Greek into Egyptian, and vice versa, but we are in 1800, now we are in 2025, there is a problem, it is not exactly that it was necessary to translate the hieroglyphics are stickers, it is necessary to understand how these stickers came out, and you have to understand a fundamental thing, that what each one has in the history book is not correct, in the history book the first language of the world, the first culture of the world would have been that between tigers and, or friar, the Zabulonese civilization. Aren't things like that? The first form of writing. It is precisely the Egyptian form. This is the stickers then turned into krune, giving life some forms, in which a modified EI factor gave rise to think, to the Chinese, and therefore it is obvious that we find traces of the Pythagoras theorem in Egypt, in China and the Vale del Loto in Mesopotamia, because, at a distance of about 1,400 years of difference, these languages have all developed at the same time, in the same moment, and not only from this part of our world, but also on the other side of the world we go. In Latin America, let's see the Micmac civilization. The Micmac are Indians. Poor people, who live on the border with Canada and already press me, because with that Fredo how he did a being there. The Micmac did not know, reading in Excribe, when the Jesuits come from the Micmac, and what does the Jesuita do? No, think about. Bergoglio can have the adpeo of associato. 10 instead of helping the Micmac up, of teaching the pre-lies, that is, everything that is in the institution, and we had to speak with the to speak Micmac, and Micmac had a strange right language, and I write, and Ivano detached the cortecci of the trees to talk to the Tribuvicin, and they made the drawings above. This drawing that the Micmacs did proved to be the same drawings that the review of their language, that is, the Micmacs wrote in the Bangs and Giziano. Geoglyphica, but who is in the marked? And then we begin to understand that I am a bowl found near the Ajutai, which is made of gyrography and of playing language. It must be asked that it is the taught to those populations of South America and North America the Egyptian gyroglyphico, and with uniform. And so we do when we do on the balance of the scabs on the Sichi, or sticks, how to pay off. And the problem is the reacanigative. The reacanigative is a problem of human blood. We are resing because we come from resus that it Similar that in those times would have given rise to humanity according to our poor biology. Okay, and then the reacanative this is that proteina that is not attacked outside the globe cells of Rossi of Il Sang, from where Kazovinin. This means that we have a second creation and well, when the reacanative appears on this planet. 36,500 years ago, second. Biological scientific love. Titulus the 15 years ago, it is also the beginning of Zeftepi, that is, the beginning of the times according to what the Egyptian calendar is. In which distant the Egyptians begin to know they exist and who are the commanders of the population. Of beings, with the negative reaches, with the skull or elongated cephalic Dalek. But also the number of the skulls are equal to ours, with an tooth. Learning different, etc., 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 etc. Say something and the simplest thing. Say we don't know how three things are, but the thing is to know that we don't have it. Understood nothing. Professor. Then, in the meantime I feel I call into question and synod and had angry, said, maybe. He looks at the mirror, I understand something on me again. One of the questions that the messages asked us a lot, especially when we talked about Egypt, and it concerns the Popiolii. This method with the synthetics is very interesting. But to the thing that even more interesting to succeed, to understand how much time actually it takes to go out to have a vision is more circumstant that expands the most. Fashion come out in garments and if we did not have to make this Visarka a little in many, you can posse of the earth. When it would like to go out to try to garments and if even high in parts there are things for us. I would also add another thing, how one does one rent a saddle, there is Kara and I would forget. The reward is there and then I am at home because I miss the sudlet and then I owe. Call those of the satellite and is there how to do it to Professor? It is much simpler than a one I cannot imagine. In our last searches about Kaffir, we used 2 satellites. Different that Capella expense satellites is a good expense. What did we do? We have sides to Capella expenses, it is a great expense if we used to use. But even if we had not asked it would have been the same, their data they published them. On the Situus Gold is that they were open source. It is the science said, yes, of course? Indeed, yes, we are happy that you used in our data to do your research. And we have Aurodata, downloadable from everyone, anyone free think, and we have set up our research. Totally free. We took the data, we processed them with the program that. In the world it has developed only the blonde type in our team, and therefore being one of Patimondial of these things, of communications techniques, especially of Rada. From synthetic opening, I remember that he taught up to a university until recently. English all these things, so it's not the latest arrival. The problem is that he, being a computer engineering and also specialized in software and the software if he does it alone and therefore we managed to get a software that could watch inside the pyramid, in words, downloading the data that are free in that everyone can have, it takes 5 minutes, put the computer and shake the computer. For a week for 3 days, for a month, to have 1, 2 and 3, 10 cinema. Tomographer's center totally 0 was easy so not. You can think that the rewriting therefore there is no need to have an arduous. Our satellite not absolutely not because the satellite works with the Tecnica del Sarcio has gathered throughout what we have modified. It is not our do technology, it is the software, that is, we have thought, that it is possible to modify. A signal, which is a photonic signal, the fucking Reva think with the piss an object returns. Back to this everyone knows and in the period in which everyone goes back all. Make an analysis of the distance between the radar and the point where the signal has gone back. With a whole series of problems that to be solved, because it is the signal with a certain power. The signal affects the l'obiettivo, the environment is risen, only half of the signal goes back with a lesser energy. So there is everything a series of problems that giving Solsto techniques, which have been solved. But from a technological and boy point of view, we know how to make it work, and we are there. Asked, but if I make more measures constantly, a ton, there is if it were I. From measurement that takes place in very bright times in 100 m, 0.001 millimeters, because the structure has moved. With the same vibrations of the term terrain. And, at that point, what happens that comes? Reported in a signal that I am not, it titrates the position of the object, but theta too. The frequency with which this object is moving over time. The trick of the rada from a synthetic opening is that detecting in the object of 1 meter. S60, substantially savor a 12 kilometers antenna, and how to do it I put a 12 kilometers antenna of singing. At one point, the creator de SAR said, I don't put a 12 kilometers antenna there. I put a 6M antenna, and I make them a radius of 12 kilometers. Which ray that lasts little conditionum, the antenna to tada 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 to tada 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 to tada to tada to tada to tada tora tatato. Totala tada 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 tola to tada to tada to tada to tada 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 to tada 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 tora tada tada rita tada tora tada tora tora to r. As is that this sky appears so beautiful with all illuminate stel, with all the powders, stellars bright, photography is made a spine of times, one above the other. What happens? What does the transform of Furies do? The background noise that is very high. It confuses with the bright signals of a star, it seems all background noise, if you see anything. But when the many photographs makes the background noise is statistical, so once positive, once negative, while the noise of the antenna of the bright star is always there, always there, always there, always positive, so in the end there is a background noise. That he was killed once with positive signals, once with negative signals giving a background line, flat but remains the signals of the bright star, this is what attracted outside and what has made us a comparison as if he puts if in phase. Account or phase 2 signs so you have skidded the year certainly and there it has you. It is all a transient because the tomographs are built in such a way as to put the signs in phase and on the other hand can evident for this reason the rada from the normal synthetic plan to make 2 steps before a series of frames. And the second after 16 if they have an eniglis of about half, because guys must find in the same position as before to redo the same photographs from a live point of view. And different. These 2 images appropriately treated because these images come form in matrices, the matrices are a beautiful, then do what you chanchi, who commentaire from a geometric and deco point of view that those tomographic come out. Which will then originate, even to a 3-dimensional image. Of course, however there is the kama of Ushia via summa, so for Ushia to have a vision much wider, as we are saying before, there is a lot of steps. here, we managed to do everything in one step, because we have done something called suba for tura, for radar, something that can also be complicated to explain the time, but instead of wasting 12 kilometers to obtain an image quite resolved, we wasted the first 6 kilometers of radius to obtain information on the position of objects, and the other 6 kilometers though keep the same information but energy on those objects, that is, the position of with the objects. Therefore you're only one step to obtain results we pulled. Interesting, a question that I had to hook the Vapa first, let's say on to famous hawk of the hilarious can hit of Shastova that it was I would have in the pedo of water with the question that all the how many do. They do as they made there. As they did, therefore, then, the problem of the causation of awareness must be science today and in the last 3 years there. But all of them, the ULO of which it seems to be fundamental meters, which was common sense, science. Of course, he does the measures, but the measures controls them with common sense. No, it is only like that. Student once in the laboratory vis an emelis, he feels like this cragioli, in fact it is a count. If a mela brings me a mela and says to me, this mela weighs chile, is the cook, there is. And I told him, but Bailaza will be wrong, the Bailaza route. Ape, that is possible that Bailaza is not talking, it is certain that it is possible. A mela cannot weigh 5 kg, right? And if not, you die, it is a motor, it's a pawn, isn't it? That is, these bullshit here, we cannot support them scientists. The men of science, these things do not believe it. So what's the problem? The problem is bond sense. Bond sense is to understand that if it makes you in a measure, this measurement, it must have a meaning. It is very simple, the sarcophago that is inside the room of the Pismi di Cruncufo, does not enter the door, but not only does not enter the door, it would not even be able to be the weight that has attracted it inside. So you know what? Anti-Agitzes, are graduates in letters they make say. Pretended to make Agitologists, which the pyramid was built to return to the sarcophagus. No, the pyramid was not a seek. The pyramid, the seeking entered another side. And in fact by doing the analysis of the wall in front of the seek, it turns out that there is one piedra in the wall, which is a piedra that has almost the same dimensions to the seeking. You can remove Ansi, if they have the evidence that you can be Bat and Diali was. Get to the seeking, because he made a whole path completely of Ferrer. As I tried to show in one of the 7, 8, 10 conferences I made when I was talking of the Pyремia of with a Kufu. You clearly see that this was the Astra was. Move lowered to the floor where there is a hole that allows this to be the Astra to enter. Under the floor, hole that was hidden by a gentleman called Zakia Was. And that instead of making legitologists to clearly modify the evidence of the existence of this passage. Then the Sargo made this act passed by that hole and then the floor, the stone the floor was made. It has raised, the laparite is furnished. It is of those who raised this thing, there is no doubt, there is no doubt. And Mr. Chiawas not only has a monument that he was in charge of conservation, but it has made for some mysterious scotto that we have. We still don't know. Okay, she had some pocket that Kanza Kripwas when you have the opportunity on one. The discovery of this famous? Yes, then look, To beautiful nothing is successively having the paternity of. Nascaperta because the brooms are of everyone, they are ours, they are and they are. Many in the optomostrous one, in which the instant you, to whom the awareness of this thing, the broom becomes you. What makes me turn the tables is that this, which has one of a large defect, that is, substantially it is pink mason, Corsiano, that is, the worsen. Of humanity is classified in the roble one and he wants to hide a fundamental thing and the fundamental thing. It is a political reason and then because they do not become who say as much as, he has the task of saying that the I crawl the pyramiles. If you go down, if the pyramiles have not built the ancient, it would be discovered that the ancient Tsitsi was the shepherds who did not even know. Cut a piece of piedra with a knife they had, that they would never have had. Who did not even have the language to speak, that I was of the Trogo you say, who did not understand. A fuck. This cannot afford the policy of the government today. The Giziano and then he was obviously brought Suageti like Zakia was who substantially. They studied in Allah Al as the place where Skules was born in Bonds where the half the worst American farm Zakia was when he retires on the Journal of Cario states all those who have faced him so well and among these thanks also the CIA and it is not clear why he has to thank the CIA? Because you look. Professor, I don't know if he got to say so I turned to wander on our channel. But we some episodes, on the pyramids, we have already done it because obviously for Volt's generation perhaps represents the most fascinating story than antiquity. He accompanied to history, let's say modern and actuality. I stayed. I remember very struck by the fact that these famous caniculates we open the openings upwards that the pyramids have not been excavated, yes it is a beautiful job. Of the carving of the roast that already as I would say in design, these speakers were thought. To get to the fact that the absence of the three pyramids of the Tiana of Giza. And let's say they are perfectly perpendicular to how the stars of the belt were found. Of D. Orione at the time of the circumstances. These are only two examples, not only of the ability of those who built the pyramids, but also a proof of the charm that still involves us today. So pulling the somni of this speech a little and then we will go greetings. According to her, we say we face or not, as we say how it is used to say infantryman in the room. Who is who built the pyramids? According to her. At that time. We dill the question in two. Here he did not build the pyramids, with her crazy 1,000,000,000%. It was not the ancient Egyptians. Also because if it were the states, who were graph moms, they don't write it all that. FA is there, we didn't go to the gabinetto 3 times a day, they don't write it. And no trace of how. Executioners on the pyramids have been excluded, no trace of constructed hypotheses, but we. When we go to study the pyramids we find out things, that the shirt is people not. For example, the boulders with which the pyramids were built, which does the account, weigh. If many act if so many acts of the cell, that is, between 40 and if so many acts of the accommodation, and are 20 million pebbles, 20 million which according to some, as the pyramids. They should have been built in about 20 years there would be 20,000 workers. Who would have posed 3 of these pebbles every minute for 20 years without sleep even at the night of course, working with the fatletry cells that we make ourselves? Immediately I realized that things cannot go like this. In the analysis of the structure of these pebbles, we discover that some streets are magnetically active, that is, if you touch a median abuso next to it, A busso the sweater deflects the plan, the north, this happens because the pebbles have lost weight to be able to be moved and put in that place, and to lose weight there is one thing fundamental, that there is already everything written in the literature. It is coexist photons and phonons, that is, light and sound together to make the refraction index of this gigantic Pietro one that we have to go different. Pietro Nessie Clover becomes soft. And here there is an error of the translations. For example, you work, because when you say fiest, that is, it translates from English. From the building, you know English, I'm not even their language, let alone. If there is a degree of the addition, there is a vocabulary, in Glees, there is 80,000 words. An Italian vocabulary, there is 160,000, you want the real culture in the Italian. English, point number 1. Then they translated with fiest, that is, melted material. Instead, it was not fiest, but very black, that is, emaspided, that is, it becomes morbi. From this material. And in quantum physics works it is written as you do, yes. He takes a pedrone, makes viboria of a certain frequency, and in the instant in this frequency reach the length adjacent to a crystalline lattice and the other, in one axis, that is. For example, the 6, in the Pietron it is soft, because it is about to merge but blends not like the heat, that is, in all random directions, but in a single direction, in that direction. Transparent, and at that moment a bright radius of photons, laser, enters this Pietron and produces an antigravitative effect. Now I don't want to enter the mathematics of the what, but everything is written and already published in the literature. So you are how you create a white hole inside the Patron, which loses weight and can be so posted, but be it. It's soft and is soft in such a way that the whole crystalline lattice over time when Strasolodica takes the direction of the polar of the planet as the basalt when it is. There is from the Lucano the basalt when it is there from the Lucan makes you see the same thing there is. It is oriented everything there and through the Cilio del Balto that we have understood how the axis is. Magnetic moved during the last 100,000, 200,000 to 1 million years. And nano. Gously this thing happens, and not only happens because the physics are back to the extinguishing. He says, but it happens because there are the testimonies of Chilo Estreto who says the Piedra became bright and feel a whistle, and this whistle and probably was something called shamir, that is, that worm of light is used to cut the pawns, with which Solomon's time was also built. Think, everything is already written. Except that the agent is a desire to go to see these things, and then there was certainly. Who built the Tecamili? Someone had this technology that we're certainly not. And then Repastorelli, who was called Negiziani today. Professo of V that this vision is decidedly suggestive, and I think we will see you. To ample a second discussive, because here maybe you have to get out of the area and gizzy. Or to go out to go to others in other places. It allows me only a very simple inclusive to ask the Pedissima a question. But there is the magazine is not at the moment with the guitar but made it with this. Of Scusso, but these famous Plato Smoi who have seen them part, I know that he has already expressed himself on the matter. I allowed myself to try to contact those scientists who. There is the famous study that had been, yes, from the film Matavio I didn't have answer in this we say that, but I should wait. From another couple of scientists instead of them decided to take the distances definitely. from this study, so I agree because I felt it in an interview with. Orty was actually evaluated this study that did it and we are. We also came out to get answers. This is something that is very interesting, therefore my question is used for the plasmodes for the moment. Sutigioni no longer mourn, these gifts no longer mourn, what if you like? At what point and are these warnings? But Professor, I enter rudely because Luca used a little visual series technique, that is, at the end of the first episode it used the hook for the creation of a second episode, he understands, created this curiosity. But then Luca needs to always see if the Professor Malanga will want to return to us. You take it for granted. Ah, there is. But if the problem is before time, for the rest there is no problem. There is no? My only problem is operatic, fear of being dressed threatens. Pantoiko and to appear people with a whole, there is one who knows above all. Who are full of doubts and problems, but what I say I believe, here, is not. Said what I say is true, but in a good end what I say I think it's true. Here, let's say the question. And this did well to specify it. And we thank you for this admissive. Yes, the rest of the plasmkers, I see it from a geopolitical point of view, that is, it is already 2 months ago, to someone who had made me. This interview I said look when it comes to Donald Trump and goes to the government. Becoming the presidents, the plasmons the drones disappear and in fact the drones have disappeared. Or it is no longer speaking nobody. Donald Trump himself, before he goes to who these drones, who sacks one knows, who you see the Biden, because he knows it's stuff, that you have to shoot them. Now, 3 days ago, to said, it's not all our stuff, don't worry, we want to. Very good. Here, I don't want to draw noon rewritten that it might seem. You see, I people talk and how to have a meter and look for. Examine the number of neurons that these people are in the head. Yes, like neurons. Of Trump are bases, of Biden, no more bases. I'll go I with these characters here. In consideration, whatever they say, one day they will have a real thing, but unfortunately, they totally split in the past that I also consider that real thing that they say with a great putinata. The problem is, not knowing, all this stuff what it is. And thinking that politically speaking is the moment when it is religiously speaking. A day will return to this planet to punish humanity, as some say. Characters, also on Italian YouTube channels, who first spoke had of the phrases with the Genevaria of ver and their accommodation of the phrases with aliens. And then they will also have phrases with chalk Christ. This but all this character is taken here and the STS thrown out of the window, what? Matters is to understand that yes, like the Americans knew perfectly that we cannot talk about aliens, we cannot speak of drones that are certainly not American but that probably they were the USI or Chinese then preferred to move media attention to aliens. They are the aliens serving every song that they then disappear and better that we talk about aliens. Because aliens are something impalable while the Russians and the Chinese are something terrible. If the Russians and Chinese solve Verano, the American territory is a casino, the Americans throw themselves the fiesta. As in 1920 with the transmission of Orsonols who said that aliens had landed. That my serious my stutterers my news my mine. That there were no more, and the aliens remained in the whore, now we must also canal the alien information, then this work comes out. Scientific, which says that there are these plasmids in the autospine, in the other Prosperous, in the groundsosphere. In the groundsosphere there are these objects, if they are always seen, which coincidentally the same behaviors. Hostile, it is written in the article, of the aliens and therefore could be escaped for aliens. In the end it is sure, quiet states, the aliens are not there, they are these objects that are probably also alive, so I didn't have to interested you this thing. Fantastically, which is something that does not make sense, this to make the slopes that you think the repair, now that is enough that you don't think there are the aliens who come on this planet and so the information blackboard, of inner polita and start again to. The capable once were the UFO, objective the anti-identified, now there are. The UAPPs, that is, unidentified phenomena, once at least the objections, are now become phenomena, but unfortunately all the studies I did to show something. Flying balls that run in our cells, you should remember when our subjects are taken, quickly, bring a flying car, peeled. Then the microcycles regained, from a hunt here, the ateltus the memory, make partners of the our stools, use our feminist fairy tale because they are steps and then and of nosy rulers, well it is enough that you do not go to aliens, that is, the trash that we must. Looking is as if it were a garbage, yes there will be aliens, but on Alpha Day Centauri and people do not. He sees the garbage box under Kasajua. No thinking we can leave each other with the promise to face this speech extensively in a next episode of the Pekaranara. Yes, gladly, even if you think that I have not been dealing with more than this problem for seminary. But evidently what I have written in many years of having left its mark. Evidently, in the meantime we thank you for being here with us stays. I don't have to say I believe none of our friends of the channel to follow her because I think we already do it because the public has passionate. I certainly know the internet, I just have to thank the for this chat. The sums, thanks the Luca for 5.1% of the channel and invite you to describe you. If you haven't done so yet, click the bell to stay on days on. Upcoming channel outputs. Thanks Professor and thank you all. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. The UCA Terzani is Marco Terone, present the Pekaranara, what others do not remember.